Rain batters the high windows of Salt Hall so hard the glass trembles in its lead. Edda Vale stands just inside the torchlight with her scarf pressed over her mouth, staring at the beast Alpha King on the Tide Throne and trying not to let the council see her flinch. He is larger than rumor makes him, shoulders buried beneath a torn wolf mantle, iron crown jagged against the vaulted stone of Blackwake Bastion. Fire catches in his eyes. On the table between them lies a single sheet of stamped vellum and the black seal of Lantern Court. No one tells her to come farther in. They do not need to. Counselor Alric Marin waits with the patience of a man who has already counted the cost of everyone in the room. Her father, Joran Vale, stands to one side with rain still darkening his coat, his face fixed toward the floor as if the flagstones can spare him from what happens next. The paper on the table bears only a few lines, but Edda does not need to read them again. One signature, one judgment, one king declared unfit before Lockfast. She braces for rot. That is what they tell her all the way up the sea road to the bastion. That the king smells like a drowned crypt. That grown men gag at the threshold of his chamber. That whatever still lives inside him wears a body the sea should already have taken. But the smell never comes. There is only wet stone, lamp oil, old iron, and the sharp mineral sting of stormwater moving through the walls. It is wrong in a way that turns her colder than stench would have. The king watches her lower the scarf from her face. His mouth is half hidden by the heavy dark beard and the roughened lines of old scarring that climb into his throat, but nothing about him looks witless. Nothing looks lost. His hands are bare on the throne arms, broad and scarred and steady. They send a cartographer, he says, voice low enough that the rain nearly drowns it. Not a healer, not a priest. His gaze shifts once to the vellum. That tells me what frightens them. Marin moves before Edda can answer. He slides the certification toward her with 2 careful fingers. The harbor does not have the luxury of theater tonight. His tone is mild. His eyes are not. The king has become erratic. He wakes the wall watch with claims of fractures no mason can find. He delays the standard closure sequence of the Ironwake gates. He keeps forbidden records and hears impacts no one else hears. He taps the paper once. You are here to confirm instability. Nothing more. Joran still does not look at her. That hurts more than the counselor's voice. Outside, a bell tolls from the harbor, long and bronze deep, and every torch in the hall seems to lean with the sound. Edda feels it in her ribs. The first storm bell. Somewhere below the bastion, chains are already moving through wet pulleys, gates being readied, crews taking their places in the dark. If she signs, the city seals. If she refuses, she has no idea what happens to the people she loves because no one has spoken that part aloud. They have only brought her here and put the pin within reach. The king rises. The movement is slow, but it changes the room. He is not soft with illness. He is built like a seawall that has learned to stand after damage instead of before it. Beneath the open collar of his mantle, white scar tissue plates the upper line of his chest in rough bands that catch the firelight like salt crust. He does not come toward her. He comes toward the table, and when he sets one hand beside the certification, the wood gives a quiet groan. If she signs, he says, looking only at Edda. They close a cracked wall under full surge. Marin's expression tightens. Do not force drama where there is only fatigue, your grace. But Halvorskeld does not turn to him. They call it instability because warning would cost them too much. The hall goes still. Even the rain seems to pull back for a breath. Edda looks from the king to the paper, then to her father. Joran's jaw is rigid now, a pulse beating near the hinge hard enough for her to see it. He knows more than he is saying. So does Marin. So, suddenly, does the man they bring her here to condemn. On the far side of the throne, a slate board lies propped against the stone. Not prayers, not ravings. Columns of numbers, title marks, chamber depths, intervals struck in chalk so hard the tips must have snapped. Her fingers curl against the edge of her chart case. What records? Marin answers too fast. Irrelevant ones. The king lifts his hand from the table and points toward a stack of bound charts resting beneath the nearest lamp. The ones they don't want read. No one moves. A torch spits. Water runs somewhere deep under the floor, a hard rushing sound that does not belong inside a hall this high above the harbor. Edda sees then what the fire has been hiding on the carved wood of the throne arm. Not random gouges, not damage from rage, but neat rows of marks cut at measured distance, as exact as plotted soundings. Counting marks. The realization lands cold and clean. Whatever story they build to bring her into Blackwake Bastion, it is already breaking apart, and if she touches those records, she may not be able to sign anything at all. Marin's hand comes down over the nearest chart before Edda can reach it. Not hard. Not enough to make a scene. Just a flat, practiced claim of ownership that tells her more than an outburst would. The fire throws the bones of his fingers long across the paper. "You are not here to indulge a sick man's obsessions," he says. "You are here because Alderhavn still recognizes disciplined judgment when it needs it most." Halvor does not move back toward the throne. He stands at the table with the stormlight whitening one side of his scarred face, and the hall seems to brace around his silence. Edda feels her own pulse in her fingertips. The charts are near enough to touch. The pen is nearer. Then Marin reaches inside his coat and lays a second document beside the certification. This one is thicker, bound in salt-stiff leather. The red wax brand at the bottom is broken, but still visible enough to read. Vale salvage. Edda's throat tightens before she understands why. Marin opens the ledger with a care that feels obscene in a room like this. Damp pages breathe up the smell of ink, mildew, and old rope fiber. Line after line runs down the paper in a clerk's narrow hand. Docking fees, storm losses, lien renewals, compound interest, emergency winter grain, equipment replacement after flood season, penalties on delayed payment. Half the entries bear marks she has never seen. Half of those are stamped with Lantern Court authority. At the last page, a black notation cuts across the bottom in fresh ink. Default at sunrise. Yard seizure immediate. Family remand pending. For a moment, she only hears the ring, not the crack of it on glass. The softer run inside the walls. The deep hidden channels of Blackwake Bastion carrying stormwater toward the harbor. She stares at the final line until the letters blur, then sharpen again. Her father still says nothing. That silence is worse now. Silence means he has seen this page before. "If you sign," Marin says, "the Vale yard remains yours. The chain birth stays with your brother. The foreclosure order disappears. Lantern Court is not without mercy." The word mercy makes something hot flash through her chest. She looks at Joran. "You knew?" He flinches so slightly another person might miss it. Edda does not. She has spent too many years reading weather and faces before it reaches the sea. "We knew enough," he says. "We?" Her voice comes out thinner than she wants. "Who is we?" Joran's mouth closes again. The answer dies there. Marin folds one hand over the ledger and smooths the page as if calming a child. "The hour is too narrow for domestic dispute. Your father petitions on behalf of the family. I offer resolution. Sign the finding, and the matter ends tonight." Ends. The storm bell sounds again from somewhere below the bastion, nearer this time, followed by the groan of chainworks waking under the harbor. The floor under Edda's boots carries the vibration up through bone. Lockfast is not a council word anymore. It is machinery. Men in soaked coats hauling on iron. Winches turning. Gate crews taking their marks in the dark. Halvor's gaze shifts once to the ledger, then back to her face. If she signs, it doesn't end. Marin does not even pretend patience now. Your Grace has mistaken endurance for authority. The city cannot be held hostage by your private fears. At that, Halvor's jaw hardens. Not outrage. Containment. Tell her what happens when the West Basin takes full surge against a hollowed footing. Marin says nothing. Edda's skin goes cold along her arms. What hollowed footing? Joran finally lifts his head. His eyes look older than they did when they entered Salt Hall, as if the storm has aged him by years in the span of 3 bells. "You are not being asked to solve this," he says. "You are being asked to save your family." The words land cleanly because they are true enough to wound. She thinks of the salvage yard at Hook Quay with its warped planks and tar-black hoists. Of the loft where the charts dry. Of Nil sleeping 3 hours at a time between chain shifts because missing one means someone else takes the berth. She thinks of sunrise striking the locked gate there with a court seal nailed crooked over the boards. Marin turns the pen so it points toward her hand. Another silence opens. Broader this time. The rain presses against it. Far below, a horn blows out over Alderhavn, long and low enough to make the lamps tremble. Halvor's voice drops, and because it drops, she hears every word. That is the first closure call. Edda looks at the pen, at the ledger. at the charts hidden beneath Marin's hand. If she delays now, delay itself becomes a choice. And somewhere under Blackwake Bastion, the gates have already begun to move. Delay still looks like movement. Edda reaches for the charts not quickly, not like defiance, but with the same steady hand she uses when soundings matter more than pride. Marin shifts to stop her. Halvor moves first. He does not touch the counselor. He only sets his palm flat over the bound stack and drags it across the table toward her in one hard, scraping line that makes every flame in Salt Hall seem to draw back. The leather corners catch on the wood. Wax seals snap. Marin's hand is left hanging in the air, empty. For one beat, no one breathes. Then Joran says, "Edda." Not loudly. Not as a command. Worse. As warning. She looks at him and sees the fear there now, stripped bare by the sound of the chainworks below. He is not afraid of Halvor. He is afraid of what happens if she starts reading. That is enough to make her open the first chart. The parchment is thick, salt stiffened, the edges gone soft from years of handling. Depth lines arc across the page in ink faded brown with age, but the newest marks cut through them in dense black strokes. Fresh revisions, notations crowded into the margins, impact timings written beside tide heights and gate loads. Halvor's hand is blunt and disciplined, the hand of a man who has no time for elegance and less patience for error. Edda braces the parchment against the table with 2 fingers. Her eyes move. West Caisson. Tidal pull at Dnieper Treat. Settlement shift. Repeat impact noted during northeastern surge. Subfloor resonance. Not madness. Not wandering. Pattern. She reaches for the next sheet. Marin catches the corner. "You are not qualified to interpret private command records in a storm hall," he says, and the calm has gone thin in his voice. Edda does not let go. Then why bring me? The question lands harder than she expects. Joran shuts his eyes. Marin's fingers tighten on the page, then release one by one. Not because he means to. Because there is no safe answer in the room. Halvor watches them both and says nothing. The second chart is newer. The ink still holds a faint metallic sheen where it catches the lamps. Edda feels the breath leave her body in a slow, controlled way as she reads the overlay marks. They are not harbor routes. They are load paths. Pressure transfers. The force of the closed gates driving back into the wall footings under full surge. Along the western edge, where the stone should thicken, Halvor has drawn a hollow in red chalk, cross-hatched until the paper nearly tears. Beneath it, a single note. Widening. The horn sounds again from below Blackwake Bastion, shorter this time, followed by the grind of gears engaging somewhere under the seawall. The table shivers. Dust slips from a mortar seam high in the arch above them. Edda's hand stills on the chart. She feels it then, not through sight, through her fingertips on the wood. A low, blunt tremor, as if something vast has struck the outer stone and withdrawn. Halvor turns his head toward the western wall before the vibration fully dies. "There," he says. No drama. No performance. Just certainty. Marin forces a laugh that falls dead in the hall. Storm impact. We are in a bastion over the sea. Edda looks down at the chart. The impact mark on the margin is timed to the quarter bell. The sound has come on the quarter bell. Not near it. Not around it. On it. A colder silence follows. She reaches for the slate board beside the throne. This time no one stops her. Numbers run in descending intervals, each cross-marked with harbor depth, current angle, chamber response. On the lowest line, the next strike is already calculated. She counts the breaths without meaning to. 7, 8, 9. The next impact comes deeper than the first, a muffled concussion rolling up through Salt Hall and into her knees. One of the lamps on the far wall flickers sideways. Somewhere in the corridor beyond the doors, a guard swears under his breath. Edda turns to Marin. "How long have you had these?" His jaw hardens. Long enough to know what fear does to judgment. That is not an answer. It is the only one you need. Halvor finally shifts his weight back from the table. The wolf mantle along his shoulders stirs, damp at the hem, smelling of rain and old smoke. "Tell her what the locksmen report from West Basin," he says. Marin's gaze flashes to Joran, then away. Another answer he will not give. Edda feels something inside her settle into shape. Not trust, not yet, but direction. The city is moving toward closure. The council still wants her signature. And the only person in Salt Hall whose facts arrive before the stone shakes is the beast they call unstable. She bends over the chart again, tracing the red chalk hollow with the side of one finger. The paper is rough. The line is not. This is not a guess. It is a measurement made over time. The cost of standing still changes in that instant. Delay is no longer refusal to help the council. Delay becomes time stolen from whatever lives below West Basin. Joran steps toward her at last, boots dull against the stone. Enough, he says, too late and too quietly. You have seen what you came to see. No, Edda says, eyes still on the chart. I haven't. She turns the final page. This one is not a sounding map at all. It is a gate schematic, old and dense, showing the inner chambers beneath Iron Wake and the stress routes under full Lockfast load. Across the western footing, in Halvor's hand, one line has been drawn so hard the ink has cut through to the fibers beneath. If closure proceeds, breach begins below the lower wards. The words do not blur. They only sit there. Behind her, Maren inhales sharply for the first time that night. And Edda understands, with a clarity that turns her hands numb, that if Halvor is right, they do not need her to judge a mad king before dawn. They need her to bury a drowning city. Maren hears it in her silence. Not hesitation. Not confusion. Recognition. His hand goes for the chart she is holding, and Edda pulls it back before she knows she has decided to. The parchment catches against the edge of the table with a dry tearing sound that seems far too loud in Salt Hall. Joran takes a step forward. Halvor does not. He only watches her over the candlelit spread of numbers and stone marks, his face unreadable now except for the attention in it. That page does not leave the table, Maren says. Edda's fingers tighten on the lower corner. Then stop trying to hide it. The words come out low, almost level. That frightens her more than anger would. Below them, the chainworks groan again. Not the clean ring of machinery running as designed, but a dragged, straining sound that travels up through the hall's stone ribs and into the soles of her boots. Somewhere in the bastion, a bell answers with 2 short strikes. The timing is closer now. The city is moving whether truth does or not. Joran reaches her first. Rain still clings cold to his sleeves when his hand closes around her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise. Hard enough to remind. You are done, he says. Edda looks down at his hand. He lets go? That is the controlled breath in the room, brief and sharp and almost gentle. It leaves behind the smell of wet wool and old rope, the smell of home carried into a place that has none of it. Hook Quay comes at her all at once, not as memory told aloud, only as the body remembers when fear opens the wrong door. Salt drying on lines in winter. Her mother rubbing lamp oil into cracked knuckles at the loft table. The bite of brass dividers in Edda's palm as a girl when she first learns not to tremble over a harbor map. A page held flat under one careful hand while another voice, quieter than the storm outside, says, "Never let a merchant tell you what water means." The words pass through her so quickly they almost do not register. Almost. Maren sees only that she has gone still. "Miss Vale," he says, and the civility in it is colder than insult. "You are not being asked to carry the harbor. You are being offered the chance to spare your family. Sign the finding. Leave the rest to those charged with governance." Halvor's head turns slightly at that, just enough for the fire to catch the white ridges of scar tissue disappearing under his collar. "Those charged with governance," he says, "are the reason West Basin is hollow." Maren's eyes flash. Enough. But the word falls uselessly between them, because Edda is no longer looking at either man. She is looking past the throne. There, in the curved stone behind it, the torchlight schemes across a seam too straight to be natural. A narrow line, nearly invisible in the wall until the flame gutters and makes it shine for a heartbeat. Not masonry. A hidden door. Beside the throne's right arm, the floor bears a half-moon scrape mark as if something heavy has been moved across it many times, carefully, without witnesses. Edda steps sideways before anyone speaks. Maren follows the movement of her eyes, and his face changes. Only by a fraction. But it is enough. "What is behind that wall?" she asks. "Nothing relevant," he says at once. Joran says, "Edda." Halvor says nothing. She turns to him then, because silence has begun to mean more than speech in this hall. Rain shudders at the windows. A draft moves across the floor, cold with seawater and old stone. Halvor's gaze rests on her face for one long breath, then shifts once, to the seam in the wall, and back. Permission without rescue. Maren moves to intercept her, but Halvor takes one step off the dais, and the counselor stops. He does not touch him. He does not need to. The power in the room changes with distance alone. Edda goes to the seam and puts her fingertips against the stone. It is colder there than the rest of the wall, damp in the crack. She feels along it until her thumb finds a recessed iron catch disguised as mortar. The metal bites with rust. She pulls. For a moment nothing gives. Then something unlatches inside the wall with a deep, reluctant click. Air spills out, stale and dry, and carrying a smell so faint she nearly misses it. Ash. Wax. Old paper. Her breath catches. Not because of the chamber opening beyond the hidden door, though she sees shelves in the dark and the glint of brass instruments waiting under dust cloth. Not because Maren swears softly behind her, or because the bells below strike again, faster now. Because that smell is wrong for Blackwake Bastion and right for one place only. Her mother's hands used to smell like that when she thought no one noticed. Edda does not turn back. She reaches into the darkness, and her fingers close around the edge of a wax-wrapped chart tied with a faded cord she recognizes before she understands why. The cord is blue once. Not bright now. Not after years in dark stone and salt air. Not after wax dust and handling in time. But as Edda draws the chart bundle into the light, the faded braid catches against her thumb, and she knows it before the rest of her does. Signa Vale ties winter stores with that knot. Nets, herb bundles, old sleeves turned to wrapping cloth, the small practical things that need fastening without waste. 3 turns, a pull, then the tail tucked left instead of right. Her hand stops. Behind her, Maren says, "Put that down." She does not. The wax cloth crackles as she lays the bundle on the nearest open space beside Halvor's tied records. The hall has gone strangely narrow around her. Rain at the windows. Torch hiss. The slow, distant labor of Ironwake working toward closure. She can feel Joran watching her now, really watching, not avoiding it any longer. That hurts too. It means he knows what this is before she opens it. Edda slips a nail under the cord and pulls it free. Inside is a chart, folded twice and sealed again with brittle wax so old it powders under her fingers. Not Lantern Court black. Not the merchant stamp. A tied crown crest half broken away, the old harbor mark used before the council remade the city in ledgers and fees. Her breath catches so sharply she tastes lamp smoke. Halvor shifts once behind her. He still does not come closer. The chart opens across her hands. The first thing she sees is the handwriting. Not because it is elegant. Because it is not. The letters lean forward slightly, narrow and unsentimental. Each numeral cut, so clearly it can be read in bad light or sea spray. Signa's hand. Her mother labels jars that way. Tallies rope lengths that way. Marks broth lids for bad days and worse weather that way. Edda has watched that hand move across rough paper at the Hook Quay loft table since she is old enough to count. For one beat the hall disappears. There is only winter lamplight, the scrape of a stool on plank floor, her mother bending over a page with her hair pinned badly because the wind will not let it stay, saying nothing while Edda copies harbor contours and tries to hide how badly the brass compass bites her fingers. Never the long route first. Find the safe depth before the proud one. The memory breaks as the next horn sounds from below the bastion. The chart in her hands is older than that memory and stranger. It shows the understructure of Ironwake, but not like the public plans stacked in Lantern Court. These lines run deeper, threading command channels beneath the wall and through old chamber shafts no merchant maps mention. At the left margin, in Signa's hand, are columns of names and seals. Most are crossed out. One line has been struck through so violently the nib tears the paper. Signa Halden. Edda stares. Not Vale. Not Salvage Quarter. Not the name she uses to sign flower receipts, birth shares, and winter coal accounts. Halden. Beneath it, smaller, almost pressed into the fibers. Bloodright dormant. Issue concealed by petition. The floor seems to shift under her boots, though Blackwake Bastion stands solid and cold around her. She reads the words again. Then once more, as if repetition can make them belong to someone else. Joran makes a sound behind her. Not speech. Air leaving the body too fast. Edda turns. Her father has gone pale beneath the weather in his face. One hand braces on the edge of the open wall chamber, as if the stone there is the only thing holding him upright. Maren says nothing now. The silence around him is uglier than interruption. It carries calculation, quick and vicious, stripped of courtesy. What is this? Edda asks. No one answers. She looks back down. A second sheet slips loose from inside the fold and flutters against the table. Smaller. Denser. Not a map this time, but an internal transfer record, written on tied office vellum gone yellow at the edges. Inventory notations. Assignment lines. Court shorthand she has seen only in old harbor ledgers no one below Lantern Court is supposed to touch. Female child, lowerborn placement approved. Petition accepted under winter discretion. The next line sits lower, as if added after argument. Maternal line assumes permanent reduction in station and removal from claim visibility. Edda's fingers go numb. Not bad luck, then. Not a salvage marriage from necessity. Not a long slide into Hook Quay because that is where the Valas belong. Her mother steps down. Deliberately. Paper by paper. Name by name. She takes herself out of sight and lets the city call it ordinary. A colder piece of understanding slides in after it. The debt. The yard. The years of never quite drowning and never once surfacing. Containment. The room holds while that lands. Rain drives at the windows. One of the lamps gutters and writes itself. Halvor's records lie open beside her mother's chart like two halves of the same wound waiting for recognition. Edda hears herself ask, how long? Joran does not pretend not to understand. His mouth works once before the words come. Long enough. Long enough for what? For survival. It is not an answer. It is worse. It is the shape of every answer he has ever given when bread is short and winter is longer than truth. Edda feels something tear quietly inside her. Not love. Not loyalty. Something simpler and harder to repair. The belief that silence in her family means helplessness. It does not. It means choice. She lifts the transfer sheet. You let her bury this. Joran's eyes close. She buried it to keep you breathing. Marin steps in then, sensing the edge of the room, turning away from him. Old archival irregularities do not change the order before us. Whatever this was, it is dead law. The gates still close. The debt still stands. Sign, Miss Vale, and your family keeps what little the city has allowed it. The city has allowed it. Edda looks at him and understands, maybe for the first time in her life, that poverty can be curated as carefully as power. Her hand tightens on the paper until it trembles. Halvor still does not speak. He watches her, and in that restraint there is something more dangerous than pity. He knows. Not all of it, perhaps, but enough. Enough to leave the truth where she can choose it herself. Joran sees that too. Sees the space opening. Sees her stepping toward it. No, the word cracks out of him. He pushes off the stone and comes fully into the light. Rain-dark coat. Rough hands. The smell of Hook Quay carried stubbornly into Salt Hall. Put it back. Edda does not move. His face hardens the way wet rope hardens in frost. You want the truth? Fine. His voice drops low, roughened almost past use. Your mother chooses a small life because a small life keeps you alive. She gives up her name. She gives up her place. She lets Lantern Court write dead around us instead of chains around you. The horn below sounds again, closer, more urgent. Joran points at the certification still lying beside the ledger. Now you do the same, he says. Sign it. Sign it. The word hangs there, rough as rope burn. Edda keeps the transfer sheet in one hand and her mother's chart in the other, and for a moment, she feels absurdly aware of their weight. 2 pieces of paper. That is all. Not iron. Not chains. Not floodgates. Yet Salt Hall seems to tilt around them, as if the whole of Alderhavn has been balanced on hidden paper all along, and she has just laid bare one edge of it. The horn below sounds again. Closer. Not louder. Closer. She can hear the answer it pulls from the bastion. The drag of turning gears. The heavy clank of a locking arm seating where it should not yet seat. Men shouting through stone and storm. Blackwake Bastion is no longer preparing for Lockfast. It is entering it. Joran sees her listening and mistakes it for weakness. This is what she bought, he says, voice low and urgent now, no longer for the room, but for her alone. Your mother did not give up a name so you could drag it into Lantern Court on a night like this. Edda looks at him. She gave it up because Lantern Court would have taken more. His jaw tightens. Yes. The answer lands with a force that makes her fingers cold. Not denial. Not shame. Agreement. Joran takes one step closer. Rainwater darkens the shoulders of his coat. The hem leaves a damp crescent on the stones where he stands. He smells of harbor brine and tar and old wool. And for one blinding instant she is a child again at the Blackwake loft table, watching him shake weather from his sleeves before he comes in. Believing exhaustion means innocence. That is gone now. It does not come back. They write debt around us, he says, each word clipped hard. And debt is survivable. Pride is not. Blood claims are not. You think names feed people through the black months? You think old rights keep roofs from collapsing in sleet. A quiet life does. A low one does. Sign the paper and keep what is left. Edda glances at the certification on the table. The pen beside it gleams wet black in the lamplight. One mark of ink and the city closes around a lie. One refusal and Blackwake is finished by sunrise. There is no route through this that leaves both hands clean. That truth has settled too far inside her now to be argued away. Marin hears the shift and presses it. No one is asking for courage tonight, he says. Only proportion. The city survives by choosing the burden it can bear. Halvor laughs once. Not loudly. Not kindly. The sound is short and tired and far more dangerous than anger. Then say it plain, counselor. The burden you can bear is the lower wards filling first. Marin rounds on him. You have done nothing but feed panic with private numbers and closed-room theories. Because your men strip ballast from West Basin and sell harbor safety by the ton. The words hit the hall like thrown iron. Joran's head jerks toward Halvor. Marin goes very still. It is not the stillness of innocence. It is the stillness of a man measuring how much has been spoken in front of the wrong witness. Edda's eyes move between them. Ballast. She sees it at once because she has charted the barge traffic herself on lean seasons for extra coin. Merchant lighters sitting too low on departure and too high on return. East Basin manifests balanced neatly. West Basin tallies always blurred under freight categories broad enough to hide anything. Stone removed by degrees. Weight sold off under ledger names harmless enough to pass a tired clerk. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just less support under the wrong water every month until a wall begins to listen differently to the sea. No one told her. That makes it worse. She helped map the disguise without knowing its shape. The thought leaves a bitter taste at the back of her tongue. She sets the transfer sheet down slowly beside the open chart. You knew the footing was changing. Marin does not answer her. He looks only at Halvor. You accuse elected office on the authority of a sealed chamber no court has audited in 2 generations. Halvor steps down from the dais. The move is unhurried, but the room contracts around it. He is still broad under the torn wolf mantle, still scar-slashed and iron-crowned, and built like something raised against storms instead of under roofs. Yet the menace the council wants from him never fully comes. What comes instead is worse for them. Certainty. He stops across from Edda, leaving the certification untouched between them. I know what the wall says when weight is stolen from it, he says. No flourish. No plea. Just fact. His gaze drops once to the papers in her hands, then lifts to her face again. He has seen her mother's name. He has seen Joran's fear. He has seen the moment the old city reaches through paper and hooks itself under her skin. And still he does not say the word claim. He does not say blood. He does not point to her like an answer he can use. That restraint enters her more deeply than anything else in Salt Hall. An intentional silence opens. Rain thrums at the glass. A torch spits. Somewhere below, the chainworks pause, then shudder forward with a brutal metallic wrench that makes every lamp shake in its bracket. Edda feels it through the stone before the horn follows. A hard, rising call that strips all lingering pretense from the room. The second closure phase. Marin moves first. Not toward her. Toward the table. He snatches up the certification and thrusts it back into the open space between them. This ends now. Joran does not look at the paper. He looks at Edda, and what is left in his face is not authority, but naked insistence, the kind worn by men who have convinced themselves that fear is wisdom because they cannot afford another name for it. Choose us, he says. Halvor says, just as quietly. Choose the truth and lose them. Edda stares at the pen, then at the charts, then at the hidden chamber still open behind the throne, breathing ash and old paper into the storm-chilled air like the past itself has been uncorked at the worst possible hour. Below Blackwake Bastion, something strikes the west wall so hard the impact rolls up through Salt Hall and throws a line of dust from the arch above them. And this time Halvor does not need to point. The crack of stone carries all the way into the room. The crack does not stop when the sound stops. It leaves a trembling in the stone under Edda's feet, a thin living shiver that runs through Salt Hall and up the hidden seam behind the throne. Dust drifts down through the torchlight in a pale ribbon. No one speaks at first. Joran's face has gone the color of old sailcloth. Merrin looks past all of them toward the doors, as if calculation can outrun impact. Then the next horn tears through Blackwake Bastion. Not a warning now. A summons. Merrin moves fast at last. To Lantern Court, he snaps, and the room breaks around the order. 2 guards appear at the doors before Edda hears their boots in the corridor. Another shutter rolls through the hall, followed by the deep metallic wrench of Ironwake dragging itself deeper into closure. The charts on the table jump. Her mother's transfer sheet flutters against Halvor's red-marked breach line and settles there like the papers have chosen each other. Edda reaches for them both. Joran catches her sleeve. Leave those. She pulls free. No. That word costs something the moment it leaves her. Not because it is loud. Because it is clean. She folds Signa's chart and the transfer sheet against her chest, then snatches Halvor's breach map from the table before Merrin can stop her. Leather, vellum, wax dust, old paper. The past, and the wall pressed under one arm. The certification remains where it is, waiting like a trap, no longer pretending to be anything else. Halvor does not resist when the guards close on him. One fastens an iron collar around his throat, linked with a short chain to the wrist manacle already hanging from his belt. The metal clicks into place with a sound that makes Edda's stomach turn. It is not fear she feels then. It is exposure. All the old stories of a beast king are being physically arranged in front of her, because spectacle is easier to govern than truth. Halvor lifts his chin to take the collar. His gaze finds hers once over the guard's shoulder. Not asking. Not yielding. Only measuring whether she is still holding the papers. She is. They move out of Salt Hall into the long passage that curves along the inner wall of Blackwake Bastion. The corridor is colder than the hall, damp with sea breath and lit by bracket lamps that sway each time the bastion takes a strike. Alderhavn is somewhere below the arrow-slit windows, black water and dim furnace light, and the crowded lower wards pressed along the harbor's edge. Edda catches the smell of the city in flashes as they descend: coal smoke, kelp, wet rope, fish scales, the sour churn of too many people living too close to rising water. Another impact hits before they reach the stair turn. This one throws a guard against the wall. The lamps swing wildly. Somewhere farther down, a woman cries out and is cut off by a shouted order. Edda's shoulder slams the stone. The folded charts bite into her ribs. No one suggests turning back. Lantern Court is already awake when they enter. Bronze lamps hang low over the chamber, painting the wet flagstones in dull gold and shadow. The harbor model at the room's center gleams dark with polished water channels, all neat little stone islands, and gate marks and merchant routes arranged as if the city can still be reduced to something controllable by hand. At the far wall, clerks crowd around a ledger stand. Locksmen in soaked coats wait near the west doors with seal hammers hanging at their belts. The smell here is ink, wet wool, lamp grease, and fear. And Nils is there. He stands beside the east pillar with his wrists bound in front of him by dock chain, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. He is trying to hold himself straight, trying to look more insulted than frightened, but his eyes find Edda and the effort breaks at once. He cannot be more than a boy in that look, no matter how broad the chain work has made his shoulders. Something inside her goes tight enough to hurt. Joran sees her see him. I told them to leave him out of it. Merrin does not bother denying the lie or the truth. He crosses to the center table and turns as the chamber doors shut behind them. Witnesses are necessary when a city stands this close to harm. Edda's hands close harder around the charts. Hook Quay is here. The lower wards are here. Nils is here. Halvor, collared and ringed by guards, is forced to stand below the harbor model as if he is the threat beneath it. There is no private choice left in the room. Merrin has stripped that from her and arranged the pieces in public. The final closure bell begins to toll. It is not a single note but a measured sequence. Each strikes slower than panic and more terrible for it. Between them, the chamber seems to hold its breath. Clerks stop scratching. One of the locksmen crosses himself without looking up. Rain runs down the high windows in silver lines, distorting the harbor fires outside into wavering smears. Marin extends his hand. You're finding Miss Vale. Edda does not move. Nils shifts against the chain, one soft clink of iron. Joran's face folds inward, old grief and fresh fear sitting in the same bones. Halvor says nothing. He stands with the iron collar at his throat and the beast made visible for everyone's comfort, while the truth under West Basin grinds closer to becoming irreversible with every bell. The chamber waits. Then Edda walks to the center table, lays Halvor's breach map across the polished harbor model, places Signa's chart over Lantern Court seal book, and sets her mother's transfer sheet on top of both. The silence that follows is so complete, she can hear water dripping from Nils's cuffs onto the floor. She looks straight at Marin. You forged debt around my family to keep us low, she says. You stripped ballast from West Basin while Ironwake carried the load. And you brought me here tonight to call the only man reading the wall correctly mad. No one moves. Then Halvor drops to one knee, the chain at his throat going taut, and says into that stunned stillness, by stone law older than your court, command answers her before it answers me. Chapter 9 by stone law older than your court, command answers her before it answers me. The words do not fade when Halvor finishes speaking. They remain in Lantern Court like struck metal, ringing through the stillness after the last syllable dies. No one moves. The bronze lamps sway faintly above the harbor model. Rain keeps needling the high windows. Somewhere below the chamber, deep in the belly of Blackwake Bastion, the machinery of Ironwake grinds on with the indifference of something too large to care who is right. Halvor stays on one knee. That is what makes the room impossible. Not the claim itself. The fact of him there. Iron collar at his throat, chain drawn short between two guards, wolf mantle dark with rain, scarred head bowed before her in full view of Lantern Court. The beast Alpha King everyone wants arranged into fear has just placed fear somewhere else. Marin recovers first. Get him up, he snaps, too quickly, and the strain in his voice shows for the first time. This is not binding law. This is theater dragged up from flood rot and old stone. One of the guards jerks the chain. Halvor arises because the iron forces him to, not because the council commands it. The collar scrapes against the scarred line of his throat with a sound that sets Edda's teeth on edge. He comes upright slowly, every inch of him still larger than the room wants him to be, and yet the power has already shifted. Marin hears it. The locksmen hear it. Even the clerks near the ledger stand hear it, because none of them look at the certification anymore. They look at her. Joran takes one step forward and stops as if the floor itself refuses him the second. His face is ash pale, his coat still wet from the storm, hands hanging empty at his sides. He looks older than he did in Salt Hall. Not weaker. Older. Like the years he spends choosing less ruin over more have all arrived at once to collect themselves on his body. Edda, he says. Nothing else. Her name in his mouth almost breaks her. Not because it is gentle, because it is familiar. Hook Quay lives in that voice. The loft table. Nils laughing with split knuckles over bad cards and colder tea. Signa bending over a kettle with her sleeves rolled, never wasting heat, never wasting words. A whole life built out of narrow survival, and the belief that narrowness can count as safety if you hold it hard enough. Marin hears that hesitation and lunges for it. This dies here, he says. Miss Vale, you are under no obligation to entertain broken succession myths dredged up in a storm. Sign the finding, return to Hook Quay, and your family keeps what belongs to it. Belongs. The word lands wrong. Edda looks down at the papers spread across Lantern Court's polished table. Halvor's breach map lies over the harbor model, red mark cutting through West Basin like an open vein. Signa's chart rests half over the council seal book, the founder lines exposed where they should never have been seen. The transfer record sits crooked on top of both, one corner lifting in the draft from the windows, as if it is trying to flee the light and failing. The certification waits at Marin's hand. One signature. The debt vanishes. Nils goes free. Joran keeps the yard, the ropes, the winter stores, the warped boards of Hook Quay. The whole low-life Signa chooses and Joran guards. One signature. The lower wards drown under sealed gates, and she helps close them. The final closure bell begins to toll over Alderhavn. It is slower than the others. Heavy. Ceremonial in the ugliest way. Between each strike the city seems to hold itself rigid, listening for what kind of morning is about to claim it. Edda feels the bell through the soles of her boots, through the table under her fingertips, through the silver founder seal hanging below Halvar's collar where it rests against his chest, dull in the lamplight. She stares at it. Halvar does not speak. He does not ask. He leaves the silence open between them, and that silence says more than anyone else in the room has managed with words all night. He will not pull her forward. He will not use what he knows of her blood, her mother, or the old law to trap her into becoming useful. Maren would. Joran already has. That understanding settles cold and absolute. Edda steps around the table. A guard shifts at once. Another reaches toward the chain at Halvar's throat. Maren's hand slaps flat against the certification. Do not touch him. She ignores him. The space between her and Halvar is only a few feet, but it feels like crossing a threshold nothing in her life has prepared her to cross. Up close, the iron collar looks older than the rest of Lantern Court's restraints, forged thick and dark with use. Rain beads in Halvar's beard. One of the white scars at the base of his throat vanishes beneath the iron edge. He looks like something built for weather and punishment and standing where other things break. And beneath the collar, hanging from a black cord darkened by rain and skin, is the seal. Edda reaches for it. The nearest guard grabs her wrist. His fingers close hard enough to stop her. Not bruise. Not yet. But the pressure is real, public, and meant to be. Lantern Court does not drag women by the hair. It uses cleaner hands than that. Release her, Halvar says. The guard hesitates. It is not the order that does it. It is the way the locksmen at the west doors have begun watching. Not Maren, not the clerks, but the seal. Old law is dead until a room full of frightened people starts remembering it all at once. The guard lets go. Her wrist throbs where his grip has been. Edda reaches again and closes her fingers around the founder seal. It is colder than the rain, heavier than it looks. The cut edges of the old mark bite into her palm, as if the metal has been waiting too long to be handled by the right blood and has forgotten gentleness. For the space of one breath, maybe two, she understands that she can still let it fall. Still step back. Still choose Quay over Alderhavn. Family over truth. Obscurity over whatever comes after. Then the bell strikes again. And below Lantern Court, something in the west wall groans like a living thing being forced under load. There is no space left to be undecided. Edda turns the seal in her hand and drives her thumb against the sharpened rim. Pain flashes white-hot. Blood wells instantly, bright against silver. Joran makes a sound. Half step, half plea. Nils jerks against the dock chain binding his wrists. Maren lunges across the table. Stop her. No one is close enough. Edda presses her bleeding thumb onto the founder mark on Signa's chart. For one terrible instant nothing happens. Then the blood sinks. Not smears. Sinks, drawn down into the old lines as if the paper drinks it. A thin gold light catches in the cutwork of the printed mark, runs once along the founder channel, then vanishes beneath the vellum. The chamber holds its breath. A second later Blackwake Bastion answers. The sound comes from under everything. Under Lantern Court, under the harbor model, under the clerks and the locksmen and the polished floor itself. Not a crack. Not a collapse. A release. Ancient bolts tearing loose from long-idled housings. Stone channels opening. Iron mechanisms waking below the gates with a groan so vast the lamps whip in their brackets, and dust pours from the rafters. The harbor model jolts. One carved pier leaps free and skids across the tabletop. Inkpots topple. A clerk screams. The west doors shudder under a pressure wave from below, as if some buried hand has struck the whole bastion from the inside. Maren stumbles and catches himself on the table edge. The color drains from his face so quickly it seems to take years with it. Joran does not move at all. He stares at the blood on her thumb, at the seal in her hand, at the chart glowing faintly where the founder lines have answered, and whatever small, survivable future he has been trying to force around her all night, tears open in his eyes. Halvar bows his head once. Not to Maren, not to Lantern Court, to her. When he lifts his gaze, the room is already beginning to understand what it has witnessed. Your order, he says, voice steady under the collar. My queen. Beyond the windows, across the black harbor of Alderhavn, a new alarm erupts from Blackwake Bastion, older than the closure bells, harsher, built to carry over stormwater and stone. And from somewhere below the western wards, the first screams rise. The screams do not stop after the first one. They rise from below Lantern Court in broken waves, echoing up through the stone throat of Blackwake Bastion until even the clerks at the ledger stand cannot pretend they are hearing storm alone. One voice becomes three, then many, blurred by rain and distance and the hard geometry of the harbor walls. Somewhere in the chamber, a lamp glass cracks from the shutter running through the floor. Edda feels the tidal halver gives her settle on her shoulders like wet iron. Your queen. There is no room in her for it. Not yet. There is only the sound of Alderhavn beginning to pay for delay. Marin recovers before anyone else. Seize the seal, he says, and the command slices through the chamber sharp enough to wake the guards from disbelief. One of them reaches for Edda's hand. Halver moves faster than a man in a collar should. He catches the guard's wrist and twists just enough to stop him, chain ringing, boots grinding on wet stone. No flourish. No struggle made for spectacle. Just interruption. The guard hisses. The second steps back instead of in. That hesitation changes the room. Edda closes her fingers around the founder's seal, blood tacky against the cold silver. Open west venting first, she says, and her own voice startles her less than it should. Now. No one moves. The silence that follows is not empty. It is crowded with ranks, wages, old habits, merchant signatures, every small training that teaches a city who gets obeyed and who gets watched. The closure bell keeps tolling beyond the windows. Deep under Lantern Court, the bastion groans again, a long subterranean complaint that turns every face toward the floor. Edda points to the locksmen at the west doors. If West Basin takes the next surge sealed, the lower wards drown first. Open the venting chambers. Pull everyone uphill from the harbor line to Hook Quay. Ring the cliff stairs. Wake all lofts and rope houses. The eldest of the locksmen looks instinctively to Marin. Marin steps forward, rain-dark coat flaring at the hem. You have no standing in this court. Halver straightens to his full height despite the iron at his throat. She has more than you. The old locksman's gaze flicks from the founder chart to the seal in Edda's hand, then to the harbor model where Halver's breach map still cuts West Basin open in red. He swallows. The cords in his neck shift. If we open West venting under full closure, he says carefully, East Basin takes the drag. Then cut every merchant chain there, Edda says. Sink the ballast loads before the third surge reaches the inner quay. This time the silence is different. It lands on Marin like a blade finding the gap in armor. The ballast. Not cargo in the abstract now, not numbers disguised in ledgers. Stone, weight, profit, all of it made suddenly physical in the minds of the men who move it. East Basin is where the merchant barges sit packed tight in bad weather, moored high and heavy, waiting to sell safety back to the city at dawn prices. Joran's face changes first. Not because of the harbor. Because he understands exactly what she has just destroyed. Whatever scraps of negotiation, whatever mercy could still have been begged out of Lantern Court for the veiled debt, it is gone the moment Merchant Stone starts sinking under her order. He says nothing. That hurts more than if he had shouted. Edda turns to Nils. He stands by the east pillar with dock chain cutting red crescents into his wrists, rain dripping from his sleeves onto the floor. He is trying to hold himself still, trying not to look afraid, and failing at it in the smallest ways. His jaw locked too hard, his chest rising too quickly, his eyes fixed on her, as if she is both rescue and ruin. Take his chain off, she says. The guard nearest Nils glances at Marin. The counselor does not speak. His mouth has gone flat and bloodless. He is still calculating, still looking for a way to turn this back into procedure, but the chamber is slipping too fast now for clean tools. Take it off, Halver says. The guard obeys. Iron drops to the stone with a weighty crash. Nils rubs one wrist once, not out of pain, but disbelief. Go to Hook Quay, Edda says. Use the salvage bells. Pull everyone to the upper lanes. No one waits for carts. No one waits for orders from Lantern Court. Nils stares at her for one heartbeat, maybe two. Then he nods and runs. The movement tears something loose in Joran. Not protest. Not surrender. Something quieter and worse. He steps aside to let his son pass, and keeps his eyes on the floor. There is the breathing moment, brief as a skipped beat. Rain at the windows. The founder's seal cooling in Edda's palm. The first locksmen breaking from their places at last, boots hammering toward the west doors. Halver standing beside her with the collar still on, waiting not for permission, but for precision. Marin, motionless now, watching his city obey the woman he drags there to bury it. Then Blackwake Bastion lurches so hard the harbor model splits along the west edge. A seam opens through carved stone streets and painted water. And somewhere below them, much closer than before, a child starts screaming. The child's scream thins into the wet air below Lantern Court and is taken up by the city. Not answered. Carried. Hook-quay bells begin striking somewhere beyond the harbor wall. Fast and uneven at first, then steadier as more hands find them. From farther up the cliff lanes comes the dull beat of loft doors thrown open, voices calling through rain, boots on stair stone. Alderhavn is moving now, not because Lantern Court wills it, but because sound has reached the right people before the sea does. No one in the chamber speaks. The split in the harbor model runs jagged through West Basin, black water gleaming in the cut. Ink spreads slowly across the polished wood where a fallen pot has bled over the carved piers. Marin stands with one hand braced on the table, staring at the breach line as if numbers might still be persuaded to lie for him. Joran has not lifted his eyes from the floor. The old papers remain where Edda lays them. Signa's chart darkened at the founder mark, the transfer sheet damp at one corner, Halvor's breach map pinned beneath both by the weight of the founder's seal in her hand. The next shutter through Blackwake Bastion is lighter. Not gone. Never that. Just different. Not the blind wrench of locked pressure, but the hard pull of redirected force traveling where it should have gone sooner. The men at the west doors feel it too. One of the locksmen closes his eyes briefly, listening through his boots, then leaves without waiting for permission. Another follows. No ceremony. No salute. Only work. Halvor does not move toward the doors. He stays where he is beside Edda, collar still at his throat, the chain hanging loose now because no one holds it. Rainwater dries in dark lines on his mantle. The bronze lamps turn the scars at the base of his neck pale as cut salt. In Chapter 1, she thinks. No, she does not think it. In words. She simply stands in the same weather-struck light and understands that the shape of him has not changed at all. Only the lie around it has. A guard steps forward at last. He is the same one who earlier catches her wrist in Salt Hall, and the memory passes through both of them when he stops in front of Halvor. For a moment, he looks as though he might speak. Then he lowers his eyes, reaches for the collar key at his belt, and unlocks the iron without a word. The metal opens with a small, ordinary click. It should sound triumphant. It does not. It sounds like something misused being returned to its proper shape too late to spare anyone the marks. The collar comes away in the guard's hands. A raw line remains across Halvor's throat where the iron sits. He rubs it once with the back of two fingers, then lets his hand fall. Edda still does not speak. Blood has dried tacky along her thumb where the seal bites it open. When she loosens her grip, the founder's silver leaves a red crescent in the center of her palm. She looks at it as if it belongs to someone who stood in this room before her and made a cleaner decision. There is nothing clean in what she has done. Hook-quay may stand. The lower wards may breathe another tide. Nils is out in the rain because she sends him there. Her father's face has become something she cannot unread. None of that lifts. Joran finally raises his head. His gaze goes first to the old chart in front of her, then to the blood on her hand, then to Halvor standing beside her, no longer chained but not freed of what the night makes of him. Something passes over Joran's face, pride, grief, fear, all too damaged to separate cleanly. He opens his mouth. Nothing comes. Edda thinks that hurts most because it is the truest thing he has given her since Blackwake Bastion. Not approval, not apology, only the plain fact that there is no language left that can build the old life back over what she has chosen. Marin straightens slowly from the table. He looks smaller now, though nothing visible has changed in him. The city beyond the windows has simply stopped fitting inside his kind of order. He brushes ink from his sleeve and leaves it there when the stain does not disappear. His eyes move to the certification still lying dry and unsigned near the shattered model. He does not touch it. That, too, is a kind of answer. The bells from Hook-quay keep ringing. Not frantic anymore. Methodical. Passed hand to hand through wet rope, stair rails, lofts, kitchens, upper lanes. Alderhavn has taken the warning into itself. The chamber feels emptied by that sound. Not safer. Merely stripped of the illusion that Lantern Court sits at the center of what matters. Edda crosses to the high window. Rain batters the leaded glass just as it does in Salt Hall, just as it does when she first stands with her scarf over her mouth and waits for rot that never comes. The panes shiver under the weather. Beyond them, the harbor is a dark sheet broken by moving lanterns, by the angled glow of cliff stairs, by people climbing where they can. Hook Quay is only a smear of light and motion through the storm, but she knows it by the rhythm of the bells. Halvor comes to stand beside her. Not close enough to touch. Close enough that the heat of him reaches through the damp air between them. In the glass, their reflections waver together for a moment beneath the lamps. Her hair rain-loosened, his crown black against the window light. Both of them marked by the same storm and not made equal by it. Below, Alderhavn keeps climbing. Behind them, Lantern Court remains exactly where it has always been, full of ledgers, seals, and men who mistake delay for control. Ahead, the harbor is still black. The wall is still taking the sea. Edda rests her bloody thumb against the cold window pane and watches the rain wash around the print without carrying it away. Before you leave, comment truth or family. Which would you choose if you were Edda? And if this story pulled you in, hit like, subscribe, and stay with us for more dark fantasy stories where every choice has a cost.